forth death, and the people came by and reminded of it. All of a sudden, God said that this valley of trouble will be a door of hope. Here's what I think God is saying, among other things. I think God is saying, at least partially, that He is telling Israel that her darkest days will be her brightest yesterdays. I think He's saying these heap of stones are a blessing, because that little heap of stones reminds Israel not to sin. The sins of yesterday and the judgment of yesterday brought before us today prevent sins tomorrow, and reminding us that God punishes sin. And so that place that was a dark place and a place of trouble, all of a sudden it becomes the door of hope. A young lady sat in my office not long ago. Fine young lady, has fine parents. I don't mean at all to be condemning the family, her parents. But she said something that is so typical of our day. I was talking to her about her future, and she said, my mom and dad want me to have a job to make some money now that I'm out of high school and thinking about my future. And I said, have you thought about serving God full time? Well, she said, yes, I have. But she said, Mom and Dad want me to have a job so I can make a good living. In the case I don't marry, or if I do marry, I can help my husband and so forth. Of course, I think their motives were good. I think their conclusion was wrong. But I said, why? And she said, because my mom and dad don't want me to have it rough financially. They don't want me to have to go through financial adversity or reversals. And they don't want me to be poor. And then a sparkle came in her eye, and she said, but a funny thing about it, she said every once in a while, just the other night, for example, I heard them in the other room talking about the early days of their marriage and rejoicing about the tough times that they had. How much fun it was not to have all you wanted. And she said, I don't know why. When they seem that they never talk about the good days, they talk about the bad days. They never talk about the days of plenty, they talk about the days of poverty. And they laugh and rejoice as they think about the days when they had to sacrifice and maybe suffer together. And she said that it seemed like those were the best days of their lives. I don't know why they don't want me to have them too. Now, I guess all of us are that. But I'm saying this, that the truth is, tomorrow, as you look back on today, when today becomes yesterday, you're not going to think a great deal of the great events. You're going to think of the tough times you had together. Not long ago, I bumped into a fella. I didn't bump into him, but that's what we say. And a fella. And I'll call his name Joe. It wasn't Joe. But I saw him, and I said, hey, Joe! He said, man, Jack, old boy. And I hadn't seen him since we were in the paratroopers. Well, one time I'd seen him, since we were in the paratroopers together many years ago. Now, funny thing about it, you know what we talked about? We didn't talk about the game room where we played ping pong. We didn't talk about the furloughs we had. Funny thing about that. We didn't talk about the weekend passes that we enjoyed together. We never said a word about that. He said, Jack, remember your fifth jump? I said, man, do I. He said, I was on the ground and you were jumping. And remember, your parachute didn't open. Yeah, I remember that. Sure. No, I forgot it. And in the paratroopers, in those days, we jumped out of C-46s and C-47s. They're now DC-3s. Most of them not used anymore, but DC-3s. Now they're used sometimes still as passenger planes. But the 18 of us would jump at one time. 9 on that side, facing the other 9 on this side. And we'd look at the 9 over there, about ready to jump as they would look at us. And then we would stand up in the air. The sergeant would say, as we approached the jump field, the sergeant would say, stand up and hook up. And so we'd stand up and we'd face the back of the plane. And let's let the plane go this way, and we'd face the back of the plane, because I don't want to preach just to the choir tonight. And so we'd face the back, and there was a big cable went down over our heads, down the length of the airplane, and we had on the parachute a 15-foot what we called a static line, and we had the static line had a hook on the top of it, and we'd hook that static line on that cable, and then the sergeant would say, stand in the door. And so we'd stand in the door. First fellow would like that, with the ball of his foot just at the edge of the floor, and his hands just on the outside of the plane, looking out like that. And you never look down. You look down, you'd never go out. And never look down, always looking toward the horizon. And so the sergeant would say, strangest thing, there we're standing. Now there we are, 18 people lined up, just about to go out the door, nothing but a piece of silk on our back. And the sergeant would say, check equipment. And so the fellow behind you would check your parachute on your back and be sure it's okay. And you'd give him a little dollar tip for a little extra care, you know. And so he'd check your parachute. And then he'd say, count off. And in the back of the plane, you'd hear a fellow say, 18 okay, 17 okay, 16 okay, 15 okay, 14 okay, 13 okay, 12 okay, 11 okay, 10 okay, 9 okay, 8 okay, 7 okay, 6 okay, 5 okay, 4 okay, 3 okay, 2 okay, 1 okay. And the sergeant would say, he had asked the dumbest question ever asked in the history of mankind. And you ex-paratroopers know what he'd ask. He'd ask the question, is everybody happy? Now, can you imagine the foolishness of that question? When you got nothing but a piece of silk on your back, and you're about to jump out into space, and the crazy fool asks you, is everybody happy? The stupidity of the question was only exceeded by the stupidity of the answer, as we'd say, yes! And then he'd say, ready, jump! And so we'd jump, you put your chin against your chest and wrap your hand around your reserve chute in case the main one didn't open, and you'd jump 45 degrees to the left, knees bent slightly, and feet and knees together, and you'd count 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, and your main parachute was supposed to open. The static line would pull it open when you jumped 15 feet. And if that didn't open, then you had the ripcord on your reserve chute, and you'd pull the reserve chute. And so my fifth jump, the sergeant said, stand up and hook up. And so we stood up and faced the rear of the plane. And the sergeant said, check equipment. And we checked equipment. And he said, count off. 18 okay, 17 okay, 16 okay, 15 okay. His sissy one that one. And 14 okay, and 13 okay, and 12 okay. That's me. And 11 okay, 10 okay, 9 okay, 8 okay, 7 okay, 6 okay, 5 okay, 4 okay, 3 okay, 2 okay, 1 okay. And he say, ready, jump. And I jumped, somewhere in line, not sure where I was. I wasn't number one then, but I jumped, and my parachute didn't open. Had what you call a streamer. The suspension lines, that's the little lines that go up to the parachute from the case on your back to the parachute, many of them, they got wrapped around the parachute. And you said, Brother Hyles, how did you know that your chute didn't open? I didn't look up. I looked out. And I noticed that everybody else was going up. I know how the unsaved folks are going to feel at the rapture. Everybody else is going up. And so it dawned on me that they weren't going up. They were going down. But I was going down beyond the speed limit. And so I grabbed that. Listen, you talk about scared, buddy. We jumped 800 feet in the air. And by the time you count 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000, you never count again. And so I got to within 100 feet of the ground. I pulled my ripcord, and 100 feet from the ground on my fifth jump, my reserve parachute opened. And about the time my reserve opened, then my streamer got okay, and the other one opened, and that's more dangerous than anything, because one chute will collapse the other. And they already had the meat wagon. That's what we call the ambulance. And they already had the meat wagon down there waiting for me. And when I got up and walked off, you never saw so many disappointed medics in your life. And but now the strange thing about it, you know, that's what we talked about. I mean, we didn't say, my buddy and I got together, we didn't say a thing about weekend passes. Not a word about a furlough. We played on the same softball team that won the post championship and won the 7th Army championship. And I was the pitcher, and he played, I think, first base or so. But we didn't say one word about the old softball team. It was, remember that fifth jump? Yeah, boy, something, wasn't it? And man, we talked about that thing for a long time. You know why? Because yesterday's heartbreak are the sweet memories that we have today. I we had a fellow from Trinity, Texas named Johnson, a little bit short fellow. And this guy, it wasn't Johnson that I saw, but this guy and I were talking about Johnson. First time I jumped, I was second in line on the first jump. Had a black fellow stand in front of me going to jump out. I won't go into all that story. He never jumped. We tried 3 times, but he never jumped. He just didn't feel led of the Holy Spirit to leave that airplane. And he didn't think black skin and red blood would look good together on the horizon. And so after he refused 3 times to jump, I was the first one in the door. And the sergeant said, "Is everybody happy?" Now, a fellow named Johnson was behind me, a little short fellow named Johnson from Trinity, Texas. And he tapped me on the shoulder. I looked around at him. Now, the sergeant about ready to say, "Ready to jump." Now, I was going to be first one out. And little Johnson looked up and